Hey, I'm Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy and host of the Armed and Ready podcast. Please come and check out this exciting episode we have for you. Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Armed and Ready podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy. Today we have Navy veteran Tony Tervainen with us, who's also running a nonprofit, has a really, really cool story, and can't wait to share it with you guys. So, Tony, thanks for coming today, man, being on the show.
I appreciate the opportunity to share, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So you're in the Navy and you worked on subs, and I talk to people a lot when I'm explaining VA loan benefit, right? And people want to know, like, how long do I have to serve before I'm eligible for the VA loan? And when we're in a time of war, like we've been in since we've been in the first Gulf War, technically, we're in a time of war. So it's 90 days active duty service with your unit. And so I use the school you went to, the Navy Propulsion School or Nuclear Propulsion School, because it's so long. And to give them kind of an idea, like you go to basic training, that doesn't count. Then you go to your school, whatever your job's going to be. And for you guys, it's a long school. So you're in the Navy about 2 years before you actually join a unit, start doing the things you were trained to do, right? So if you're looking for your VA loan and you went down your career field, you're like 2 years, 3 or 4 months in before you're technically eligible for the VA loan. So it's just an interesting dynamic, and it's cool to have you on here. But I wanted to learn a little bit about your story. I always think like the submarine life is so different, right? And unique. And just kind of learn, what motivated you, what prompted you to join the military, and walk us through this nuclear propulsion school that I talk about all the time and I know zero about.
Yeah. No, it was a ride for sure. And submarine life is very unique. Submarine sailors are very unique. And then Navy nukes are unique in their own way.
Yeah.
So it definitely made for an interesting combination. But no, I was just, I was a regular kid. My dad was Air Force veteran, so he did 20 years in the Air Force.
Smart guy, real smart guy.
The story goes that he enlisted in the Air Force because his draft number, he pulled a low draft number, and he knew he was going to get drafted, so he figured he'd choose his fate.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, he went that route. So my childhood was on these giant, SAC Air Force bases, and we always lived on base in military housing, and your life, we were just part of the military. And he did 2 tours in Europe as well, and then when he came back to the States, he finally retired. And military life sets you up for a lot of things.
Yeah, but
mostly it's survival related. It's packing it up, moving it, getting set up, trying to establish friends and jobs and all this stuff, and then you're packing it back up again and you're moving somewhere else. What it really doesn't focus on is the time it takes for the kids to really focus on what their life is going to be. So, I rolled into my second high school, and my friends were like, "So where are you going to school at?" And I am in school. They're like, "No, you got to go to college. You got to do this stuff." So my friends on the football team there helped me figure out how to, enroll in college, take my SATs, get the applications out, and I got myself in college. And it was interesting. I got accepted at a couple different schools, and I defaulted to one where I knew I could work. I was working as an electrician. There was no talk about how college was going to be paid for. I didn't really understand how much it cost, and I was just surviving again with knowing so little about the world outside this environment that I grew up in.
Yeah,
and you just really don't understand it. And I got into college, and I went to Old Dominion University. I was in this engineering program. I was in these giant classrooms with 700 people, and I'm just like, do I have the right book? What class is this? What's he talking about? And it was just all fast forwarding, and I was just run over with all this. And I was on the rugby team, and finally, the only thing I was doing was going to rugby practice and rugby games. It was just like school was just such a blur. I just couldn't keep up. And it was interesting because I look back on this today, and I see a lot of our transitioning service members. I think about my transition out of the military. I think about my dad's transition out of the military, my brother's transition out of the military. And it's like my time at Old Dominion was my first transition out of the military. It's the exact same feelings that you have where you fit, but you don't fit. And it's like you understand, but you really don't understand. And one of the things I talk about to the military folks that I talk with is, transition is and it might be a little bit different for the Air Force nowadays, but you know, the Navy world that I grew up in, I might as well move to another English-speaking country when I got out, because that's really how much you understand about the community you live in. It's like, yes, I got the language. I can figure out how to drive. I can get around, I can read the signs, but it's like you just don't kind of get the culture. You just don't get like the local vibe. You're just not one of the people, because you've always been living on the margins. When I was living here in San Diego, I was working out at the submarine base, and I lived in North Park, and if it was within, you know, a mile of the road I took every day going back and forth to work, I knew about it. When I got out, I ended up getting this job in Rancho Bernardo. I was like, is that even a commuting distance? I had no idea where. I had to like get a map, like a paper map, and find out where this was. So it was a challenge for sure. Coming to the end of that first semester in college, I knew I just couldn't do it, and I was just going to walk away from it. And my dad knew a Navy recruiter through, he was doing actually mortgage sales and stuff like that. So he said, call this number. And I called it up, and it's like, Senior Chief Jones. And I said, my dad said, call you? And he laughed. He's like, who's your dad? And I told him, and he laughed even more. He said, come on down. And it was the Navy recruiter office. You know, long story short, I was the dumbest guy to ever walk in there. I was just, again, I was already submitting to the system like any good service member post boot camp.
Right.
And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. Do I have a choice? Do you have a catalog? And I was going through a catalog, and I saw they had electricians. And I'm like, I'm an electrician. You've got electricians. I'll be one step ahead of the pack. And they're like, we got a live one here. And it was all fun and games. And we went back and took the ASVAB or whatever test it was.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I was our best friend. It's like, do you want some chips? Do you want a Coke? You ever thought about the nuclear power program? And so we talked about it. And at the end of the discussion, I went, so let me get this straight. You're going to teach me how to run a nuclear reactor. I can be on a submarine. You're going to pay me for this. And you'll give me a place to sleep before Christmas when I essentially go homeless and get kicked out of the dorms. He says, yeah. I said, sign me up. And that was my, and true to their word, Christmas Eve, I was on a train to boot camp. And back then, all the nukes went to Florida with the females. So that was fun in the sun for Christmas in Florida.
There you go.
And then nuclear power school was down there. And I didn't really understand how hard it was going to be. I didn't understand all this pressure that a lot of the folks around me were feeling. I was just ignorantly not aware of. So that's probably how I got through the program. Just kind of skating through, and a year plus down in Florida, a couple different schools. And then I went to upstate New York for the land-based prototype training. And I got lucky there. I actually had like a submarine engine room sitting out in the woods. There's 4 nuclear reactors out in the woods, and we go there to train. And the one I got was a submarine engine room.
Okay.
So, and it was very much like the one I ended up going to as my first command back in Norfolk. So I was able to get in the groove really quick, hit the ground running. There's no extra bodies on a submarine. There's no room for people that aren't qualified to do a job. So getting qualified, becoming a responsible member of the crew, and not just in your focus area, but kind of everywhere. So, you know, we're getting ready to go to sea. Somebody needs to bring the food on board. Somebody needs to do this. Somebody needs to do that. And we work on the ship on the boat-wide things, and then we'd also have our individual things that we'd have to take care of. And it was great. I was on the boat for 4 years. I did 2 deployments.
Okay.
And first one was the beginning of the first Gulf War. We had an expedited. We moved up a 6 or 7 month med run, about a month and a half. It's like we were going to go, then all of a sudden we came in Monday morning. It's like we're leaving Friday.
Oh wow!
And it was it was mayhem on the pier getting us loaded out, and guess across the ocean over to the med. And that was a fun time. It was good. We left. I left that boat after our second deployment. We did a northern, kind of above the Arctic Circle deployment.
Oh wow!
And you can read about that deployment in a number of submarine espionage books. So we were the first submarine collision with a Soviet submarine that had just become Russia at that point. So it was kind of 92, so early 92. So it's kind of a shaky time for everybody.
Yeah.
But it was the first one that the United States government ever admitted to. So we were.
What happened? Was it a mistake? Or?
There's a lot of different stories out there. It's obviously it's not declassified yet, but you can read about it, and most of the stuff you read, it's just speculation that people put together.
Gotcha.
We were much more aware, I think, than a lot of those stories come back with. But it was we made it back, and I transitioned off to my next career, which was out here in San Diego, to be a support work as a nuclear planner, so kind of leading maintenance efforts on the nuclear systems on 2 submarine squadrons that we had here in San Diego at the time. It's about probably 30 boats we had. And then it came time for me to go back again, and I had been battling this. It's like stomach ache, is what it was, and it took the Navy more than 6 years to diagnose it. When they finally diagnosed it, you can't be here.
Oh no!
And I, true to like every other veteran that has these problems, they figured it out pretty quick after me getting to San Diego. And they're like, we gotta retire you. You just can't do this. And I made any deal I could to be able to stay and do my job. It's like I won't be around hot reactors. I won't go on sea trials. I won't go to sea on the tender. I won't do this. I won't do this. Just let me stay and do my job. And they did for another year or so. And then it came time to start talking to the detailer about my next boat. And they're like, no, that's it. So they kind of pulled the plug on me and put me through this medical retirement process, which I was very sick. I spent a lot of time in the hospital. So obviously at some point I couldn't do my job anymore anyway. But the medical board process is just like a slow train wreck. And
I heard, yeah.
And it's like, it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden I call in and the guy says, your paperwork came in. You don't have to come in. And I'm like, he says, you're out. I'm like, great. Where do you want me to go? He says, I don't care where you go. Just don't come here.
Wow.
And that was
just like that,
that was it. So I was 26, retired, and really from the only life I'd known, I got this giant stack of paperwork that I have no idea what it says. And that was my transition. It was
wow. So when you were in your job in the Navy working on, nuclear reactors and stuff, are you exposed to radiation and stuff when you're doing that?
Yes, it's very well controlled.
Okay.
And
it's not like the movies where you're wearing like a hazmat suit and you're inside the sub kind of thing.
We have those. I mean, those are like, that's all glorified. I mean, if you're wearing one of those, you're either doing something, either it's a really bad day at work and a lot of people are going to die, or you're just doing like some type of maintenance or something like that, or upkeep. Anytime you open a system, you want all these different levels of containment and personal protective gear on.
Gotcha.
And things like that. So we do have to open the system to do maintenance on it, or replace a valve, or test this, or change out filter media, or whatever. And nobody realizes how many nuclear reactors the military has, because there's never been an issue with it. Knock on wood, there never is. And
yeah.
A lot of that is due to this training. And Admiral Rickover really started this nuclear power program with the Navy back in the 50s. They realized, obviously, through the World War II, the power of the submarine and then its limitations. And its main limitation was this, battery technology, diesel power, having to be on the surface. It was a surface boat that dove. Why can't we make one of these, a submerged vehicle that is out of place on the surface? Just kind of flip the script. And nuclear power did that. And the 571 came out, the Nautilus came out as the first nuclear power submarine. And that, or a sister boat, circumnavigated the globe within a couple of years, completely submerged.
Wow. And
it's kind of the new era.
And they don't, because of the nuclear propulsion, they don't need to be like refueled or anything like that, do they?
So most of the boats up until modern day were designed to be refueled one time. After 20 years, they would get a new reactor core.
Okay.
And then they would last another 20 years for about the 40-year frame life of the boat. The Ford was the first aircraft carrier that's been designed with a lifetime reactor, with a 50-year reactor in it. So
Okay.
it won't have to go through a 3-year overhaul midlife to get a new reactor core. Obviously, you have to fix other things on it, and I think the new submarines, they're focusing on that as well.
Wow,
It's
incredible.
expensive to do, to do a refueling, and it takes a very expensive asset kind of off the chessboard for a while.
Yeah.
So let's figure out how to invest a little bit more money up front and keep more assets on the table longer.
I can only imagine like when they were diesel powered, like how refueling must have been such a pain in the neck, you know, traveling around the world and you got to meet up somewhere. You got
and they had batteries
port.
as well, so they could run. I mean, they ran off batteries when they were submerged. They would snorkel up top. So refueling it's the same as the issue for the other surface boats, but they couldn't carry as much.
Right.
They also couldn't carry as much stores and as many torpedoes. And a lot of times, World War II, a boat would return because it ran out of torpedoes, and it came back to get torpedoes. And they're like, okay, while you're here, let's give you some food and fuel, water.
Yeah.
I don't think their water making capabilities were very good either. But yeah, those World War II guys were hardcore. As Memorial Day comes up on us, every year I make it down to that submarine memorial and at NTC Park, the old boot camp down there, and 30% of the submarines in World War II were lost.
Wow.
And it was just a lot of boats, and the average life expectancy was 5 war patrols. And I meet people that did 11. Just like
That's a lot.
I met this one guy at my church, and he just stared at me, and he's like, 147. I don't know if I can say shit cans, but I'm like, what's that, OJ? He says, that's how many depth charges I took in my 11 war patrols. I was just like, otherworldly. It was just amazing to think about those kind of days, those times. But those guys got it done, and really proved how, if it ever hits the fan, a submarine's where you want to be. Because, and a fast attack submarine's where you want to be, because they're the ones running around going to cause trouble and take the offensive side.
Yeah.
Not kind of that defensive side. But.
So what's it like? What's life on the ship like? I mean, you're cooped up in this tube for, I mean, you guys are usually out for months at a time, right?
It depends. The longest I've gone was that northern run. We actually didn't hit any ports. So I think we were like 72 days submerged.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. So, I mean, I got to imagine you guys go a little stir crazy and being cooped up that long. So what do you guys do to keep yourselves occupied?
Just work.
Yeah.
You just work. The fast attacks don't have a gym, don't have a library. The library is like a little locker with 50 books in it or something jammed in there. So I was on a 688, which then was the newest one, but the Virginia class is very comparable to it.
Okay.
And I think we would have like one piece of exercise equipment that we'd strap it down in the engine room somewhere between some steam turbines or something, and it would always break halfway through. So exercise wasn't the big gig. The Navy has since shifted to 8-hour watches on submarines. We were doing 6s. So normally it'd be 3-section duty. So you do 6 hours on a watch. So sitting in a panel, operating the submarine somehow. And then you'd get off watch and you'd eat. And you'd probably do 4 or 5 hours of maintenance, studying, upkeep, planning, something related. As an electrician, we had to take care of all electrical equipment on the entire boat, not just the electrical generation equipment or the reactor operated pieces. So we'd have lots of work to do. If you stayed up late and you wanted to eat again, because they would serve meals every 6 hours, so 12 and 6 there was a meal.
Okay.
And once you leave port, you set your watch to Zulu time, so Greenwich Mean Time, and 6 a.m. is always breakfast. So no matter what it looks like outside, it doesn't matter. So you could eat breakfast, and then go look out a periscope or something and see it's pitch black. It's the middle of the night. But so you'd wake up, you'd eat, you'd go on watch, you'd get off, you'd eat, and then you'd probably do 4 or 5 hours worth of work, and then you'd clean up and jump in the rack, and then somebody will come wake up for your next watch. Wake up and eat. Just kind of Groundhog Day.
That's crazy.
And then you figure it's like you're taking this motorhome on a long road trip. So it's never just the same every day. It's like something's got to be worked on. Something's broken. There's something else going on. When you're on a long deployment, you'll pull in and you'll find a tender somewhere, and you'll do larger maintenance items that y'all can't fix yourselves. a lot of people are specially trained on the submarine, and there's a lot of equipment that's stuck away. So one person's always trained as a machinist, and there's like a small lathe if we ever had to make anything. Some people are trained to go inside the reduction gears, and we have people that are divers and people that are nuclear trained welders, just in case we have to do this stuff. And it's kind of like you fixing your own car, and it's like, this is too much. I need to take it into the shop. And that's why you go find a submarine tender, and there they have a bunch of shops that specialize in these different areas. Somebody needs to rewind a motor or something like that, make it work. But yeah, we did some crazy stuff. We you have a bearing that goes out on a big motor or a big generator, and if you have to, you got to replace that stuff at sea, and it's pretty sketchy sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Any cool ports you guys got to go to?
That's the one thing about submarine life. You're not made to be seen.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't go on a patrol to do port calls. We're not this obvious presence of power like a carrier group. In fact, if we were in Naples, Italy, or something like that, and a carrier group was coming in behind us, it's like, rally the troops, we're out of here. Like we don't need to be near this place when a carrier task force pulls up, carrier group pulls up.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but we did Italy a couple times, different places in Italy, France, Gibraltar was always a big stop when you were leaving the Med. You could take on the last of stores there, and it's kind of like your last truck stop before you head home. On your motorhome trip. But yeah, that was that. And then the northern one we went on, we didn't stop anywhere. A lot of stuff down in the Caribbean. So you go down there and do, there's a lot of testing areas down there after you come out of an overhaul or something like that. You'll take the boat down there and kind of shake it down. Folks are out there listening to you. They got some acoustics out there. And Cape Canaveral was always a cool place to pull into. We did that like over a 4th of July one year. So we all cruised over to, I guess it was Daytona Beach or something.
Oh, that's fun.
Hanging out on the 4th of July at Daytona Beach was pretty fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the Navy life.
You don't hear much about like submarine conflicts, like at least in modern day. I mean, we hear about like all the World War II stuff, like interactions with subs and subs shooting each other and shooting other things and stuff like that. But we don't hear much about that anymore. Is there much engagement in the sub life these days, or is it pretty much kind of what we see on the news with kind of like airstrikes and things of that nature?
A lot of ways to answer that. So my statement about it's the place to be when, if anything really happens, the place to be is on a submarine at sea. It's the safest place. There's plenty that happens with submarines, and the reason all these countries now are increasing their submarine forces. Now, obviously, I'm not speaking as a national strategist, but all these countries now are trying to increase their submarine forces because that is the most deadly asset out there. And everything else looks good on paper, looks good to the eyes, but they're just giant targets. And we would war game, we still war game, and the submarine is always the most deadly asset. We've gone out to do war games with one submarine. We've sunk entire task forces by ourselves and never been caught.
Wow.
And we had to stay inside this small, tiny box and not go below this depth. And they still couldn't find us while we managed to get all them.
That's really cool.
So they're hard to find. And as the technology improves, as other countries, the adversary countries continue to improve, there's plenty of cat and mouse games going on out there.
I can imagine, yeah.
And it's all about making sure you can find the other people. So how do you get as ready as you can?
Yeah.
And that's really what it has to be.
That's interesting. Now, is stealth something that is, you hear about stealth like for aviation and stuff like that, for avoiding radar and those types of things. Is that a thing in the sub world, or is it?
Yeah, and it's not stealth as far as radar detection that with the airplanes and the surface ships that they're looking at. This is stealth as in acoustics.
Gotcha.
So you need to be quiet. You need to be undetectable. So how much noise is your boat making? How quiet is it when it goes through the water? How fast can you turn the propeller without causing cavitation, or you're making some type of noise or some kind of flow noise. So it's about keeping it quiet, and then it's also about I think most submarines today are coated with different types of products that even if they were to get pinged on by some type of active radar, sonar, it's not gonna send the reflection back as clear as it would if it was just like plain metal or something like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's definitely trying not to be found. And some of those movies, some of those submarine movies out there, they kind of play it up a lot more. But
sure, yeah,
when you take a boat down to test depth and she starts creaking, and the Das Boot is probably the most realistic submarine movie out there.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
And those guys, they're holding on to stuff, and they got these wide eyes, and for some reason you always like look up, and you're like, because you think it's gonna the ceiling's gonna cave in or something, and you're in a cylinder, so it doesn't really matter where it's gonna pop from. But that's just kind of the feeling that you have when that thing goes down, and it creaks and moans, and you start thinking about how small you are and how big the ocean is. And anytime you get into these situations, it's kind of a humbling feeling, and you're really at the mercy of the elements, and you're going to do your best to survive so that you can execute your mission. And when emergencies do happen, and they do all the time, to different degrees,
mm-hmm.
The folks on the boat have to react to save the boat, to save the crew, and to make it home. The two most recent, submarine that we've lost post World War II, there's just not a ton of information, and one thing happens. It could be one person doing one thing wrong. It could have been somebody in the shipyard did something wrong. It could have been a design flaw. It could have been a lot of things. But if you can't fix it, the boat goes down. And Indonesia just lost a boat, and that hits everybody in that submarine world hard. And it's kind of that recognition that we were there. And it doesn't matter, the Soviets or the Russians have lost a number of boats. Argentina lost a boat, and they were just in some bad weather up trying to snorkel, and they took a lot of water down the hatch. It all flowed to one part of the boat. The boat gets out of whack, and it just gets kind of drugged down.
Oh man!
And
does weather really impact you guys when you're submerged? Does the weather have much of an impact?
Yeah, you feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. State 5C. I mean, Atlantic is a nasty place, and the Med gets pretty rough. Problem with that is, if you're down, 400 or 500 feet and it's rough seas, the boat's going to be rocking. It doesn't really have a keel like a sailboat or a surface ship. So you're just kind of rolling around. In fact, you got a big sail on top, kind of pushing you around.
Yeah.
So you'll keep rolling. But at the end of the day, you still have to do your work. So if you need to carry a trash bag around with you while you're throwing up, doing your watch, so be it. Or if you're sitting in this control room doing it, and now everybody next to you, and it's like there's minimal, the berthing areas start to smell like puke. And if you're up on the surface, because you're not allowed to dive yet because there's not enough water under you, and you're in a big storm, that thing's just rocking bad, and the whole boat just smells like throw up. And
oh, gross!
It's pretty bad, and it's like that. I mean, everybody's like mercy pukers.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your transition. So you get medically retired,
mm-hmm.
right? And then what was next for you? You had this big pile of paperwork, didn't know what you were going to do with that. And did you have a plan or any idea where you were headed next?
I didn't have a plan. I kind of go back to that survival thing, and I sat down and I said, I need to do something. He says, well, I'll go back to, and where's home? We've moved so many times. So I said, I left Virginia to come here. And I said, well, there's no bugs here, and there's bugs in Virginia. There's no humidity here. There's humidity in Virginia, so I'll stay here. So that was the great decision there. And then it's like I need a job, and somehow I think I got into a TAP class, a transition class, as a civilian. And I'd ran into some other submarine nukes there, and we were talking during the class. And he pointed out that this recruiter was there trying to recruit him, but he was moving back to Texas. So I literally went up to the recruiter and I said, well, I did what he did. And the recruiter looked at me and said, so you can fix robots? I looked at him and I'm like, I didn't know anything about robots. I said, yes, I can. So I went and took this test and got a call back. And I got a job as like a back shift maintenance worker at a Sony manufacturing facility here in North County. And that was the job in Rancho Bernardo. And I stayed there 12 years. So it was good. It was good because a lot of the other maintenance workers like myself were in a very familiar environment. They gave us a toolbox. They said, these are your books. This is the room. Red light's bad. Green light's good. Keep it going. We were making television tubes. Right? Keep the flow going. And I knew in the room before me, there was another maintenance worker. This was all automated. So it was all robots, conveyors, machines, processing equipment that was all being run by computers. And in the room before me and the room after me was another guy like me who was, maybe some sonar man or fire control tech or electronics guy. So all from kind of these technical trades from the military.
Okay.
And we got thrown into this environment. And we all kind of transitioned out together over the course of a couple of years. As we went through that cycle, I realized that I couldn't get promoted without a degree. So I started going back to school. And then every time I got a degree, I'd get promoted. And so we closed the factory about 12 years later. I left there. I was the chief maintenance engineer.
Oh, great.
I'd done 3 degrees and a lot of like Six Sigma certifications, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Sony was good to me. We closed the factory. I laid myself off. I ran my own businesses for a while. Finally got in with Booz Allen Hamilton doing strategy and process improvement work. I went to grad school while I was at Booz Allen.
That's a big company too.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. Had a good time. They're the ones that where I found a volunteer opportunity to start working for a nonprofit. I didn't know anything about this nonprofit sector. As far as a business, I had experienced it while I was kind of running my own businesses after Sony. The wildfires, my house burned down.
Oh, wow.
During the wildfires. So FEMA would come set up all these big centers, and everybody would have these booths. And I remember just like walking into these big giant gyms and stuff, and it's like all these booths, and it's like Social Security Administration, DMV, the VA. I mean, it's just like hundreds of different agencies. I'm like, who are all these people? And some were really helpful, and some weren't. And I kind of understood to, what can I get out of this? Do I deserve it? And again, it's back to a lot of this, veterans don't want to take unemployment because they feel like it's welfare. And it's that same kind of mentality still in my head that's just been ingrained in me forever. And I'm like, well, am I taking advantage of these people? And they're like, no. But then I started thinking about it. It's like I really needed the help. And, the tax assessor's office was there. And he said, did your house burn? Is full or partial was kind of the question. It's like, it's gone, full. So he says, what's your parcel number? We should adjust what you're paying in tax for your house. And I was like, I don't know my parcel number. And it's like, this is what I've got, what I'm wearing, And he says, what's your address? I gave him the address. He pulls it up. And he's like, is this your parcel? I said, yeah, that's it. He prints out the paperwork. He fills it out. He goes, so we'll get rid of these improvements, and this is your new tax basis. I'm like, all right. He said, sign here. I'm like, what else do I have to do? He's like, that's done. I'm like, well, that's pretty smooth.
Yeah.
So I go to the next thing. It's Social Security Administration. They're like, did you lose your Social Security card? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, fill out all the paperwork, get this done. The next was like DMV, and they're like, your car titles need to get regenerated, this, that, and the other. I'm like, yeah, well, this is pretty smooth. I'm in the groove. And then some people were just like, they wanted tons of information, and they wanted me to do all the stuff. I'm like, I don't have time for this. There was 2 agencies I met. One was DAV. And I said, well, what can you do for me? Because I'm kind of in the groove of it. And he says, full or partial? And I said, full. My house burned down. He says, I got $1,000 for you. I'm like, why are you giving me $1,000?
Yeah.
Because your house burned down. I'm like, so? And he says, well, this is going to help you. He says, we want to help veterans. And he had already established that I was a veteran. And then I came back the next day, and the same guy called me back over. And he says, you have a wedding ring on? He says, yeah. He says, it says you're single in your VA file. I'm like, so? He says, well, you get disability, right? I said, yeah. He says, well, you'll be getting more if they know you're married. So he's got the paperwork ready. We fill out the paperwork. I'm like, oh, this is great. So Jewish Family Services was another one. And I think they would give me like a $5,000 grant for things that weren't covered by insurance. And one of the things I had was an avocado grove, and the insurance company wouldn't touch anything with the grove or the equipment or irrigation or infrastructure or anything like that. So I told her that, and she says, yeah. She said, go get some quotes for what you need. And I needed, a chainsaw, and like garden tools and more irrigation parts.
Yeah.
So I went and got these quotes, and I faxed it to her. like we did back in the day.
Fax machine,
She
remember
calls
those?
me back the next day and she goes, okay, go pick it up. Like, go pick what up? She says, everything you faxed me is paid for, waiting for you.
Whoa.
And that's what I said. I'm like, you know I'm not Jewish, right? She says, yeah, if you were Jewish, you'd get $10,000. I work with Jewish Family Services today, and I told them that story. And they know that. They remember that program. They don't have that program anymore. And I said, like, that was just, like, life-changing for me. And really, that occurrence, me having to be that person that needed to reach out for help. I mean, I've never been rich, and we've always scratched to make it work. But we scratched and worked. My parents probably had to do more scratching than I realized, but they made it work for us in a way that we weren't really aware of it. So when I started volunteering, when I was at Booz Allen, I started volunteering for this nonprofit that helped military families. I kind of had this service, this picture of what these FEMA centers look like and how they helped me when I had nothing. And it's like, did I ever think I was going to go to a semi that's got Tide written all over the side of it and go in there and like, they gave me like some paper coveralls to wear and a place to change so I could like wash the clothes I was wearing. And
Wow.
then dry it, and they're like, hey, Tony, your clothes are ready. And I come in there, I get my clothes, and now I have clean clothes. Did I ever think I'd be in that place? It was like, no. And it's really this window into a whole other world that I never would have had exposure to. And so I had this opportunity to volunteer to do a strategy for a nonprofit that worked with military families. And they were, it wasn't anything specific. They just were supporting them. And then I stayed with them longer. They got me on the board of directors. I didn't know anything about how this whole thing worked, but I kept doing it. And then eventually that nonprofit kind of went sideways, more focused away from military families, and more on other types of military support. And we wanted to stay with military families. And then they wanted to centralize the program back to Texas and dissolve kind of our local administration and our local responsibility. And we're like, that's not going to work. So we had a choice, and everybody didn't agree with us. We kicked them off. And at that point, we created STEP. And we became independent. We said, we're going to do one thing, and we're going to do it good. We're not going to be all over the map. And it was really this financial crisis theme.
Okay.
So if a family is really in trouble financially, like, well, what's really in trouble? So how about like they're being evicted? There's a tow truck following, there's a repossession notice, their electricity is getting turned off. They're in a verifiable financial crisis. They got a piece of paper that says they're going to lose a basic necessity or it's already gone. In there, we include, diapers, wipes, cribs, car seats, food, car insurance, medical bills. It's like what? And it's all kind of situational. So it's not black and white. So one of the things we said is we need to adapt our program to every individual. So our number one core value became do the right thing. That's what we're going to be driven to do, not just hit these 2 wickets for each person.
Gotcha.
We're gonna hit the lower 6 pay grades, E1 through E6. Somebody says, these people come to us, they'll go pick up their DD-214, and they came to us, in this old agency, and we couldn't help them. It's like, yeah, because it's a nightmare on the other side too. So let's take care of transitioning veterans too, and defining that. I think we started at 12 months post transition, but now we can help them before they get out, while they're getting out, because sometimes people like me don't know if they're in or out. And it's amazing how many people are like that.
Yeah.
And then while they're getting their feet on the ground. So that became the program. And then it was like, let's just not do a Band-Aid. Let's make it so they never come back here. In fact, let's make that our priority, to get them to a lifetime of financial self-sufficiency. Because to what end are we just going to hand out Band-Aids? Right? That doesn't help. That helps them through the moment, but not for next month or the month after or the month after.
Yeah.
So created this social work-based, behavior-based financial intervention program. My financial counselors are social workers, and they work to help each of these families change their financial behaviors. And it's no different than any other chronic self-destructive behavior we have, smoking, exercising or not exercising, and these types of things where we can't get our arms around ourselves to pull ourselves out of it. And that's really where we specialize.
That's really cool. So you guys dig in and like teach them the basics of finance then to a degree, right? Like
basics of finance and budgeting, but it's really 90% of the conversation is not about money. It's about behaviors.
Okay.
It's about how they create goals, how they work to achieve them. And the social worker's job is to draw that out of them. So they create a budget, they create financial goals, they create a debt payment plan, and they create a plan to make it work. And we've put about 6,000 families through that program in the last 9 years. And a year post-intervention, 90% are in a better financial position than even when they graduated.
That's great.
Yeah, so about half of them need some money infusion. So we'll write the check to the landlord. We'll pay for the transmission. We'll turn the car insurance back on. We spent about $2.2 million doing that. And we've been doing it here in Southern California for 9 years.
Okay.
And right before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, we're expanding to cover Washington State, which is kind of our pilot. You know, can we scale this in the same time zone, somewhere close? Another 7% of the military up there, so it'll take us to 20% total.
Yeah, it's a big chunk up there.
It's a good sized chunk. So that's kind of where we're going with it. I was on that board when we founded it. I became chairman of the board because I was a strategy guy. And then our CEO, our president left, and I became interim CEO on January 1st, 2014. And did it for a couple weeks, and then I just quit booze. I said, you know, nobody else, I couldn't hire anybody to do the job. Nobody would take the job. The pay wasn't big enough. There's no benefits. It was way too risky, and nobody would take it. So if it was going to succeed, I needed to do it.
Wow.
So
it's risky.
Yeah, risky. So yeah, I went to I got divorced right after the house, about a year after the house burned down. It's just the crazy pressures. It's just mayhem when that stuff happens in your life. So we ended up getting divorced. And I just got remarried. So this was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years later. I just got remarried, still living in a trailer on my property. My new house was halfway framed up. And I went to, and she wants kids. So she wants to quit working. I'm like, so I'm thinking of quitting this Booz Allen consulting job and doing this nonprofit thing full time.
Oh man.
She kind of rolled her eyes and she said, I knew this was coming. She said, as long as I get my house and my babies, make it work.
Wow.
So that was kind of my driving force. And yeah, now I've been the CEO now for 7 years, trying to get it to a place where I can extricate myself. And it's not about me as much as the agency. So kind of working on that. And where can I kind of land my part of the plane softly and then bring in the next person that has that experience to run a larger organization.
Yeah.
And kind of hand it all off to her or him. And then I'll go start my next chapter.
That's really cool. So when you guys expand up to Washington, do you need actual like boots on the ground, like people up there?
Yeah. So we've had volunteers up there working. We have some contractors. I'm actually sending one of my folks up there now. She's leaving Friday.
Okay.
She's going to drive up there. She's going to spend 6 weeks up there. We'll also drop in a job rec up there for kind of our first staff employee up there. Kind of our leader, or
nice.
to-be leader up there. And then kind of a 3-year plan to fill up an office, be about 6 people.
Okay.
Got an office with the county up there. So we'll have kind of a brick and mortar shop that people like to see.
Yeah. Yeah. They like to see that. Now, how do you guys get the word out to the military folks so that they know you exist?
Well, we have to get the word out on both sides. So we have to let the military families know, but we also have to let our donors know because our clients don't provide our revenue stream. It's like
right
in this business, it's broken up, which was like a new concept for me to grasp once I volunteered to take this job. It's like, wait a minute, where does the money come from? So we work closely with the military leadership. And that was one of the first things we did up there. And the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, or there's no Marine Corps, but the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Army, and the Air Force all gave us the big thumbs up. We talked to the community. The community's like, yeah, this is really needed. There's nobody doing what you're doing. One of the major things that we work on is kind of partnerships with the community. So we build those partnerships. And we're serving clients up there now. And we can do it from down here, our social workers from down here. Just like if somebody's at Camp Pendleton, we don't expect them to drive to Scripps Ranch to our office and see us.
Right.
So we have to meet them, figuratively and literally where they're at in any situation. And give them every opportunity to succeed. I can't be the roadblock to their success, but they need to do the work. Yeah. They need to show up for it, but I need to make it as convenient as possible to allow them to be able to, get over these challenges of fixing themselves moving forward. So learning what they need to learn. So yeah, we were up there. We had a crew up there, had some social workers up there actually last week at a transition on the Army base at JBLM up there. guess they make about 1,000 veterans a month. They don't have any really good support programs for the veterans. So they want to start kind of focusing there. So we had a booth at their transition piece, and I had sent one of my social workers up there to man the booth. And they said, you can come back monthly. So that's a good start for us. The Navy's obviously been very receptive. We know a lot of folks from the Navy up there from down here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's just, it's boots on the ground. It's a lot of shoe leather. It's personal relationships. I mean, 8% of the folks that come to us now come from a personal referral from somebody. So all those people need to know about us, and then they need to trust us enough to send. And 25% of my folks will show up from a friend or coworker referral.
Right.
Like 20% from their military supervisor. So it's like, when the gunny sergeant says, you need to go to STEP to get this figured out, or when Navy Marine Corps Relief or one of these other relief societies, they're sending me their clients. They're sending me the people they care about, that they want to help, but they just know they're not the best resource, and they trust that we're going to take care of them properly, and that trust needs to be there.
Yeah.
So we need to build that relationship with the military community up there, and it's going well. It's easier to build it a second time when you have something to leverage.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the same time, we're trying to build that relationship in the community. It says, who wants to be part of this? Helping your local military, young military and veteran families achieve a lifetime of financial self-sufficiency. And they all say it's a great idea, and some raise their hand and want to talk more, and some of them pull out their checkbook. Some of them come down and volunteer. Some of them help us collect diapers and stuff like that, and backpacks. It all kind of helps.
No, it's really interesting, and it's so needed. And I have conversations with people about it a lot, as far as, what the military teaches us and the areas where they don't. And those personal behaviors, finance, things like that is an area where there really isn't a whole lot of time spent. So it's understandable how people can just get into bad cycles.
It is. And when I was invited to do a TED Talk in 2018, and I had to figure out how to get the audience kind of ready to support a military family. Because it's not something that a lot of people think that their just lives are taken care of, and they're kept people, and they're really not.
Yeah.
So I started the speech talking about how miserable America's financial situation is. So 3 out of 5 Americans spend their entire paycheck or more each month, and half of all Americans can't come up with $400 for an unplanned emergency. That's like America. Then every year, 200,000 of those people, right, 18 to 24 years old, joins the military. Pretty broad cross-section of America, and every state class group is represented fairly equally in the military. Then we rip them out of their home environment, rip them away from their families and their support systems. We move them every 2 to 3 years. We deploy the service member between a half and a third of the time. 60 to 70% of them earn a low-income wage. 50% underemployment rate for the spouses. And then, oh, by the way, the military is the third most deadly occupation in the United States. So over the last 30 years, more service members have died from work-related accidents than any other cause. And only at a lower rate than, I think it's like loggers and fisher folk.
Wow.
So it's dangerous. Your head's got to be in the game. And we put all these additional stresses on the financial habits that average Americans have. How do you really expect them to do any better, right? And this is why I felt like we're setting it up for failure to some extent.
Totally.
Yes, we give them plenty of financial education, but this is not an intellectual problem, right? I was literally the smartest person in the military, but I still had plenty of money problems, right? There's tons of financial education opportunities for the military. They just don't all work on all the people all the time. So what our program brings in is from this behavior aspect. Our program looks at it differently, and it's a way to pick up that. It's really like the bottom 1% of folks that come to us. They're just in these complex problems that need somebody to sit down and help them work through it emotionally, behaviorally, solution-focused. And that's where the beauty of the social worker comes in, because they're helping the people. And this time it's about money, right? We'll help you get that budget, but they have to help them realize that they can control their money and inspire them to control their money and their spending and their financial goals and that part of their life. And that's really how we differ, but kind of do the same thing in complementing, and in partnership with the rest of the community that does that.
Yeah, well, that's super impactful. I got to imagine it's pretty humbling too, just to be working with these folks and seeing what they're going through. And, if you could share, not anyone's experience necessarily, but maybe just some advice for people who might be hearing this podcast or watching this podcast from stuff that you've experienced, right?
Yeah.
Through STEP, what would be a couple key takeaways you could share with people that would be helpful?
Well, one of the big things I'll talk about with my military career is I got out feeling like I never had. I got out and I went pretty far in my life, and I was like, man, I wish people talk about these mentors. I wish I had some mentors. And I look back on my time, and I kind of look at now with older, wiser, semi-wiser eyes, or at least not as belligerent eyes. It's like those people were there. I didn't recognize them for who they were when they were there. And it was me that missed it, not them. And I recognize now plenty of times people tried to steer me in the right direction in different ways. People tried to help me along. I was very successful in the military. I was very good, and I got a lot of good opportunities. That stuff just doesn't happen by itself. Right. So recognizing those mentors around you and really truly listening to these wiser words. And like I said, a large amount of our folks come from their military supervisor. They'll be sent over. Sometimes they're brought over by their military supervisor. Sometimes they'll stop by and grab their wife and bring them over. And because they want to help. And it's, I guess I would just say, just try to listen. And then the other side I would say was, it's okay to ask for the help.
Yeah. Because
you get the help, and I would have never taken the help if I didn't need it before. And it really changed how I see people that need help. And our veterans and our military service members are taught to be able to do it on their own, get it done, and prided on that and rewarded for that. And when they ask for help, that's not always seen as a positive kind of in their eyes. But in today's environment, it's becoming much more accepted. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to learn from other people, other people's experiences, move along, and that means you need to accept the help and ask for help when other people aren't overtly offering it. And then the last piece I would say would be, with regard to finances, it can be done. The majority of folks we see, the thousands of people that we've put through this emergency financial assistance program, they know they need a budget that works. They know they're like, duh, I need to make more than I spend. But they don't.
Right.
And, Aristotle and Plato were the first ones to really talk about anything smart and record it, 300 BC. And some of the stuff they wrote on was how man does what he likes, but not what he needs. And I think Aristotle said, it's just like it's your passions dragging your needs around by the tail, basically. It's like it's what you want to do and not what you have to do.
Right.
And we get caught up in that easy as humans, and we can do that. And when you can convince yourself, I can't change the situation, it becomes even easier. And so you just work in the survival mode. After the fire, I had terrible financial issues. So somebody in my office says, that person's 3 months behind in their mortgage, and they didn't even know it. How can they not know it? I'll tell you how they can't know it, because they can't change it. And that stack of bills just gets bigger and bigger. And they need to be able to sleep at night, and they need to feed their kids, and they need to go to work and perform, and they have to limit what they're focusing on. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how they're reacting to the environment. What we need to do is teach them they can affect that big stack of bills. Most of them think that everybody else can do it, but their situation is unique. The world has round pegs and all I got, or round holes and all I got are square pegs. Yeah. That's what they really feel like. And what we teach them is they actually have these round pegs to go in those round holes. We teach them how to understand and make that work, and it can be done. People survive on every amount of money. And if you tell somebody who makes $100,000 a year to survive on 30% less, like, no way I can survive on $70,000 a year. But the fact of the matter is, folks are surviving just fine on $70,000 a year. But if you go to that person that's surviving on 70,000 and you say, you're going to get 30% less now, there's like no way I can do it on whatever the math is, 50,000. But there's people at 50,000 making it work who think they can't go down to whatever, 35. And there's people that, are down there at 20 making it work, but they know they can't go lower. We have a hard problem going backwards in our minds and thinking we can make it work and make it happen. And we need to understand that people do that every day. And for me to cut my spending by 30% so I can live within my means and achieve my saving goals and my debt reduction plan goals, it's a hard pill to swallow. But once you can kind of grasp that, then you can make your financial future work. And, oh, by the way, what were those dreams again? You wanted to buy a house. You wanted to move back to Texas. You wanted to, I don't know, send $1,000 a year back to your home in Chicago to your parents so you could pay for their heating fuel oil so they don't freeze. I mean, there's just like everybody has their own needs. Yeah. And you figure out what you want to achieve financially. And then you set those goals and you can set a path to that, and you can pay off that debt, and you can make it work. And it's the person's behaviors that controls that much more than the actual amount of money coming in the door. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, what's so great about that is the behavioral part that you guys are approaching, right? Mm-hmm. Because it really is a mindset. It's not just like, here are the instructions, follow the plan, right? Like,
because that's your plan, not my plan.
Exactly. Yeah. It's someone else's plan put upon you, right? And when it's your own personal finances, it's not your job anymore. It's a personal thing. So it's just a different spectrum in your brain too, how you're dealing with it and stuff. Yeah. That's really admirable. I really love that. That's great, and a super big need that we have with our military families. Awesome. Well, Tony, I want to just say thanks for coming here today and spending some time with us on the Armed and Ready podcast. It was really cool. And if people want to look to either get involved, to volunteer, or even to donate, or if they need to reach out and ask for help, what's the best way for them to find you guys?
Best place is just go to our website. So apply for services, apply to be a volunteer, figure out how you want to participate, either through funding or goods or a drive or somehow. It's all done through our website. So that's Team Step USA, TEAMSTEP USA.org.
Okay.
You see it there, and then if you need to contact me or anybody else, you can do it through there.
All right. Well, thanks again, Tony. I appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you have any questions about the guests on the show, please reach out to me at valoanguy.us.